Yes, guys, welcome to Chasing Green Arrows. We are back. It's international break, and we're starting to get into FPL mode again. And I know you guys are as well because we streamed on Monday and it was surprisingly busy. Week 1, everyone switches off. Week 2, we're back in the game. I'm joined by Big Man Bakar this Wednesday afternoon. Big Man, how are you, mate? Have you had a nice little bit of downtime in the break?
Hey, Jani. Thanks for having me. Hello and welcome to all the listeners and viewers. Hope you've been well. Yes, I mean it was nice. Some time off from FPL is very much needed as a content creator. I actually went into the break with 59 points as well, which was very refreshing because I've had a very rough time of late, especially from game week 5 to 7. So the week was really good, and then I've just enjoyed the international break. I've been watching the cricket. Sadly, my team hasn't been performing that well, but I mean, I'm just enjoying the cricket anyway.
Nice. How long does the ICC Cricket World Cup last? Like, is it like
It's still mid-November. It's still mid-November. It's
okay?
for
So
around 40 days. Yeah.
yeah, so it's a bit longer than a football World Cup because the Rugby World Cup, I don't follow cricket. I do follow rugby, which is also going. The Rugby World Cup is maybe 6 weeks, maybe even slightly more than that. It's an age. They literally are playing at the weekends, and then in the week there's nothing, and then you just get for like Friday, Saturday, Sunday games. And now it's in the knockouts; it's even fewer days. So yeah, I'm thankful that my number one sport, football, I can watch a World Cup within a month because I do think the best competitions are over that short time. So, but cricket is 40 days, is it? Roughly.
Yep, it is. It is roughly 40-45 days.
Yeah, okay, nice. So when did you get your head back in the game with FPL? Like, is today day one? Was yesterday
Two
day
or
one?
3 days ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
2 or 3 days ago. Let's say since Sunday. Ever since India lost to Pakistan, I've basically given up on cricket and I've been focusing back on FPL.
I can see I'm 1974 in the chat. I said he's Wildcard. It's active. Heather's with us, John and David and Greg. Hello to everyone. We're going to be addressing the 3 big questions of the week. I know Wildcard will be one. There's a few. Before we get to those questions, though, in terms of headlines from the international break, we've had, well, there's been a few bits like Tonali's betting scandal. If he's going to be banned for a similar amount of time to Fagioli, which is about 7 months, maybe more, then I wonder, on a wild card, the likes of Anderson is a 4.4 option. We've had the Robbo injury, which means Simicast, another 4.4 or 4.5 option. Before the break, we had Cole Palmer, 4.9 million midfielder on penalties. We didn't know that. There's been a few bits and bobs. The South American minutes last night, big man. Did you see that? Darwin played 90, scored and got an
Alvarez
assist.
78. Alvarez 78.
Alvarez 78. So Alvarez plays at 3 p.m. on Saturday. Darwin's in the early kickoff. The good thing is, with Liverpool, probably the most reliable, it feels like the wrong terminology, the most reliable team we have in terms of leaks. We know we have a few credible sources on FPL Twitter that will tell us that Liverpool lineup probably an hour before, not just 5 minutes before the deadline,
And even with Manchester City, I fully expect us to have leaks on Alvarez. We will have a very good idea on whether or not he's starting on Saturday. So it's wise if you're an Alvarez owner to just leave your transfers till as late on Saturday. Once we have news, we can then go. I presume he'll be fine to play. He did play the last time as well after a trip from Bolivia as well. Yeah. So I mean, I assume he should be fine for this week, but let's see.
I'm on Sky Sports News 10:30 to 10:57:58 on Saturday morning. So that is 2 minutes before the deadline. I will come off air, hope that my 4G is strong enough, have to scroll through Twitter to see which leaks are credible and which ones are rubbish, because as always, there's 50% of fake ones, and then make my transfer all within about 90 seconds. I'm really worried about that. So I don't quite know what I'm going to do. I might have to just set it in at 10:30, which is going to be rubbish. Feels a bit unfair, doesn't it? Mate, last night I watched Foden in real life. I went to England, Italy. That was terrible.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw your picture. With the Italy shirt on behind your jacket. So I watched the game. It was 3-1. I support Italy as well, just by the way. So
I know you do.
It was bad to watch. Do you think you can make it to the Euros? The game against Ukraine will be the decider, right? The game in Ukraine. That's the big one.
It didn't really matter last night. Well, it would have been nice to get the win, but England were always going to top the group. and Italy still need to get something versus Ukraine. Like that's a bit of a playoff in itself. But the good thing is the way the qualifying seeds are done at the moment with this new system is the top 2 guaranteed to qualify. If you finish third, so even if Italy don't qualify ahead of Ukraine, they'll still be in a playoff. So, and they need 4 points against Ukraine and I think Macedonia.
They still have to play Macedonia. So you would assume that they probably win that fixture, even though a few years ago they lost that fixture. I remember very clearly.
Yeah, it still pains me.
Fingers crossed for the best.
Yeah, exactly. Can't have another major tournament without Italy. Guys, let's crack on with some more FPL chat. I can see in the chat, Manon is with us. Gucci from my FPL WhatsApp group is there. Hey, Gucci. Good to see you're with us. Oh, Cam's with us as well. Gonna have to catch stream later though. The little one's got a jab today. Much love. Cool. Well, we'll see you later, Cam. Loads do watch this on catch up. So if you are one of our catch up viewers, then do drop a comment on the stream because we often forget about the comments because we're just always there in the live chat. But the comments for those watching afterwards, we want to get back to an answer as well. So do drop a comment. And obviously, if you're watching now, feel free to hit that like button. Only 10 of you have so far. So please do hit the like button and we'll crack on, I think, with our first question. So let's have a look which big question is up first of the week. Here we go. Oh, we got 82. Paul Mack from Australia with us. Love seeing that. Best time to wildcard, big man. Come on, you and I think, are probably going to be on a very similar strategy here. What are you thinking you will do? And what are the pros and cons, I guess, of game week 9 and 10 wildcards versus leaving it till that game week 19?
This is an interesting discussion. I think, as of now, I'm not exactly committing to a strategy. At least I'm not sure whether or not whether I'll wildcard this next week or let's say in game week 19. At the moment, I'm leaning towards wildcarding in 10. I'll mention the reasons later. But as long as the game week 9 window is concerned, which is this week, I personally don't think that it makes too much sense to wildcard this week. I say that because when you look at how the fixture swings are panning out, you're wildcarding out Man United assets. Man United have Sheffield United this week. I know Man United have been terrible, but you'd expect them to do well against Sheffield United. Sheffield United conceded the highest number of goals in the league. They're bottom for XG, XGC. So that's an easy fixture. Similarly, you'd want to reduce your Brentford coverage. Again, a good fixture at home to Burnley. The big one is Spurs. You'd want to reduce your Spurs coverage because Spurs have a tricky run of fixtures from game week 10 as well. Yeah. But again, Spurs have Fulham at home this week, so it's not easy. And maybe even Newcastle, because I made a wildcard 10 draft and I did not have any Newcastle assets in them. So Newcastle again have Crystal Palace at home this week, so it makes it very tricky to wildcard this week because the fixture swings are actually much more clearer from next week onwards. And it seems that the optimal strategy, if you are to wildcard, is to wildcard next week rather than this week.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I know a few have gone game week 9, including one of the world's best ever managers, Ali Yahangarov, who won FPL last year. He's gone game week 9, but I'm with you, big man. I've been saying for some time, I much prefer 10 to 9. Spurs are a great example. Like Fulham at home in 9. I'm going to have 1, maybe 2 Spurs in my game week 10 wildcard. Arsenal are another one. I'll probably have 2, if not 3 Arsenal game week 10. But game week 9, they have Chelsea away, a tricky fixture. And again, another reason for me, I've got Trippier at the moment. I definitely want Trippier versus Palace. Like I see another 10-pointer there. But again, unfortunately, with a heavy heart, if I wildcard in 10, I don't think I'll have Trippier. Do you remind me, big man? Do you have Mo Salah in your team at the moment? Because the reason I'm wildcarding in 10, yes, I can improve on my squad throughout, but it's pretty much to get Mo Salah. I can't get Mo Salah in my team without being happy. I'd have to take a -8 or a -12, right? So I'm pretty much wildcarding to accommodate him. I don't know if you are too.
I don't have him at the moment. I can get to him with a -4, let's say next week. So I'm not exactly confident on my strategy because it's slightly easier for me to get to Salah. But it's not just Salah, because when I look at game week 10, it's Villa as well. I don't have any Villa in my team. Yeah. I don't have Cash. I don't have Diaby. I don't have Watkins. Now Watkins, we'll show that stat if you could bring it up, that he has the highest number of goal involvements after Salah and Haaland since Unai Emery has taken over. He has 31 goal involvements in that period, which is way above the rest of the pack. So Haaland, Salah, and Watkins are clear in terms of goal involvement. So he's a bit of a must with the fixtures that Aston Villa have coming up. When you look at their fixtures, they have West Ham this week. After this week is really when the run of fixtures gets really good. They have Luton, they have Nottingham Forest, and there was one other easy fixture as well. It seems to skip my mind, but again, that's one of the main reasons. Salah, Aston Villa, and Arsenal as well. Now, Arsenal are playing Sheffield United, Burnley, and Luton in 3 of their next 6 from game week 10 onwards. So again, that's another very favorable swing to target. I don't have any Arsenal in my team as well. So again, that's one of the reasons that supports a game week 10 wildcard.
Yeah, Sheffield United and Burnley in 10 and 12 are both at the Emirates as well. Like that's potential captain Saka. Those two. Yeah, I'm with you for all those reasons. I do look at the wildcard team, and just the only worry about waiting to game week 10 again, and I say this every week, it's the team value. Like Matty Cash, Ollie Watkins, 2 players I know that will be in my game week 10 wildcard. Again, price rises, and it's just like it's so annoying because you're building these wildcard drafts ahead of game week 10. Like I built my first wildcard draft only last week or the week before. And I was like, I'm going to need to leave 0.5 in the bank because this is going to be 0.5, 0.6 more expensive in 2-3 weeks. And it has been. And again, I've just put one on Twitter this morning, about an hour ago. And I'm like, I've left 0.2 in the bank and I'll probably need more. So it is frustrating for those that went early and went in game week 7 or 8. Their team value will benefit because they've got on the likes of Watkins and Cash and Salah before big spikes in price rises. But I always say information is key and points over pounds. And there's so many good value options. When you wildcard in terms of Arsenal assets, big man, do you think you'll go... I mean, Saka is 8.5, same as Odegaard. But if money's tight, Martinelli could be a good compromise. He's down to 7.7. Like, there's not much difference between the output of those 3 players, and he's almost $1 million less than Saka and Odegaard. Saka obviously dropped in price again last night.
Coming to your point about team value, I know it hurts that we've been bleeding in terms of team value in the past 2 weeks, but especially when you compare to the game week 8 wildcarders. But there will be enablers who merge, and we've had Palmer at 4.9 who's emerged. If he's on penalties and if he's fit, then even though Chelsea don't have a good run of fixtures, he rotates very well with Brighton, Palace. So you could sort of rotate him with one of their defenders and still get away with it. So I don't really think that compromising just for that extra bit of information now that we have on someone like a Palmer, or let's say if Robertson was to be ruled out for a couple of months if he has surgery, then we can have Tsimikas as well. So that information does go a long way, and a lot can change in 2 weeks' time. But having said that, and on your question regarding Arsenal, I like Martinelli, I like Odegaard, and you can pair them with Saka, but I think there are other midfielders or attackers to target. For example, we've already spoken about Villa. They're really good. West Ham have a very good run of fixtures. So, you have Bowen. But in terms of defenders, I don't think other than Cash, there is any other standout defender, because you don't want to go with the City defender because of their fixtures. Again, Newcastle are tough to get to. Their fixtures aren't great either. So you'd probably want to invest in Arsenal defense. And I posted a tweet this morning which suggested that Arsenal are actually second for non-pen XG conceded since the season began. So doubling up on their defense could be a very fruitful strategy with the fixtures they have coming up.
Yeah. The Arsenal attack, whilst we're like, Arsenal are doing really well to beat Man City, when we look at the expected, it's not been flying this season. So maybe single Arsenal attack, as you say, isn't a bad strategy. It was just, for me, it might be a fixtures play, just going and wildcarding in 10. They play Sheffield United, and then in 12, they play Burnley, both home fixtures. And do I see a potential 4-0 victory against Sheffield United and Burnley at home for Arsenal? Yeah, I'm chasing just, I guess, that 3-game stretch, and then look to offload to, say, a Bowen or back to a Maddison or elsewhere. There's so many options, and we're spoiled for choice, as you say, in midfield. I also look at Brighton. We've not really discussed the game week 10 swing for Brighton. Like, again, when we look at teams' underlying data, Brighton are one of the best attacks in the league. We know they are. So do we want to go to a Matoma? Or if midfield spots are so precious, I still think at 5.3 million, The Brighton penalty taker, João Pedro, I know he's a minutes risk. I think he could be someone that you find a rotation pair of João Pedro and your fourth defender, and 1 week one starts and the next of the fourth defender starts, and you go from a 4-4-2 to a 3-4-3. So he's definitely on my radar. I don't know about yours, big man.
I mean, why I didn't mention Brighton was because I'm not really sure about them, because we've seen that De Zerbi is the manager who's made the highest number of changes this season. Brighton have rotated a lot. But their fixture swing is really good. I mean, they have Fulham, Everton, Sheffield United, Forest in the next 4 from 10. So I can see why you'd want to go there. But again, the expected minutes is where it's at risk. And when you only have other options who are more nailed and more secure in terms of start, I mean, I would probably prefer them. But you do have a point. There is a ceiling there to target, and if you nail that ceiling, the difficulty I'm having is to predict the number of minutes that the likes of Matoma and Pedro are going to get, and I don't want to have that headache every week. But if you nail that, then you've struck gold.
Yeah. And I don't know with De Zerbi. It's not quite like with Pep. With Pep, when a guy plays in the Champions League, you can't go, oh, he'll be rested now in the Premier League. You can't spot those patterns. With De Zerbi, especially with the attackers, it's a little bit more obvious. He's big on keeping legs fresh, and therefore, when Welbeck plays one, you expect Ferguson then to play the other. João Pedro has a couple of routes to the team because we have seen him play as the 9, but he's mainly as the 10. When you look at his minutes in the last few, he's been more consistent in terms of minutes he gets than someone like a Ferguson. And he's just so much cheaper than the others. Like, I can't believe how cheap João Pedro is, knowing the minutes he gets, and also with that penalty appeal. A bit like Palmer at 4.9, we're going, he's now an option. João Pedro is 2, but yeah, he's always going to come off the bench. That's the problem. So if you do chuck him in your 11, there'll be a lot of 1-pointers in there too, which is annoying.
It is a headache every week. And the thing with Brighton is we don't really have too many sources who leak their starting 11 as well. So it's not really ideal.
Yeah, no, you're right there. So the teams we're thinking game week 10, I guess, that we'll be chasing: Villa, Brighton. We have Arsenal. We haven't spoken much about Liverpool. Do you see yourself wildcarding with just Mo Salah? Or, I mean, Tsimikas is now an option too, right? We don't know much about the length of time Robbo's going to be out yet, but we will have a Jurgen Klopp press conference or two before we wildcard.
Exactly. I mean, Liverpool are a difficult one to predict, but again, if you're getting Darwin, you're getting him at the expense of someone like a Watkins, and I'm not really sure I want to go there. And again, the likes of Diaz, Jota will be minutes. So you've hit the nail right on the head. It's got to be Salah and or Tsimikas. Other than that, I don't really see too many options because their defensive underlying data isn't that strong for me to go to Trent as well. And Trent's own underlying data in terms of creating chances isn't that great as well.
Yeah. Trent is so expensive. I was looking at the Liverpool prices, and like Van Dijk is 6.1. Like, if you can get like Matip for 4.9, but again, you don't know when Konate is going to start featuring more. And it seems like, Tsimikas, if Robbo's out for a while, will be nailed. Some will chase Darwin. I own Darwin at the moment. Hasn't got me the point. And I don't know if he's going to start this weekend. But again, I don't know. I don't think I can accommodate Darwin and Watkins. And for me, you mentioned the Watkins number earlier. Like, I think is a must-have. And when I said I can't easily get to Salah, I'd have to take a -8 or -12. I could get to Salah with a -4, but I think I added a bit of a caveat when I mentioned that and said I can't get to a Salah team that I like, and that is because I would need a -8 or 12 to have Salah, Cash, and Watkins, and they're the three key cogs to why I guess I need to wildcard. When we're talking about goal involvement, and we talk about expected data a lot, so let's switch away from expected and look at actual goals and assists. You tweeted a couple of hours ago, since Emery was appointed Villa manager, Haaland's had 36 goal involvements, Salah 34, Watkins third highest, 31. That's more than Saka's 24 and Odegaard's 23 and Rashford's 22. Watkins feels, and we don't like using it as content creators, must-haves, essential. I think we can use those terms for Watkins from game week 10, can't we?
Exactly. And again, he's a boring pick, but he's just going to be delivering points week in week out. So he's someone who's very hard to leave out. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. What about Diaby for you? Are you looking at Diaby too? Because I think I'll definitely have Cash,
a good
definitely have
question.
Watkins, but I don't know about Diaby because he's been off the boil in recent weeks. I know he's been managing an injury, but he's not looked like the Diaby of game week 1 to 2, 3, where he hit the ground running literally.
He's getting subbed early as well. I mean, he's getting subbed around the 65, 70-minute mark. He's been managing a bit of an injury as well. It's more of a concern to me is the fact that Aston Villa's fixtures after game week 12, I mean, they read Spurs, Bournemouth City, Arsenal, Brentford. I mean, those fixtures aren't great. And if you're committing to 3 Villa, then you're potentially leaving yourself at the risk of having to make 2 transfers out by, let's say, game week 13 or let's say game week 15 at the maximum, which isn't ideal. So while I want to go all in on Villa, I think Cash and Watkins are absolute locks. I'm not entirely sure about Diaby because I don't really want to overexpose myself to Aston Villa. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I do like that Aston Villa defence, even when the fixtures turn a little bit for the upside of someone like Cash. So I can't see myself selling him. But Diaby, I think you're right. The competition in midfield, there's so many good other options. He feels like a transfer out waiting to happen. I don't know if I want to be bookmarking in when I could go, I don't know, Matoma, or I could go to an Arsenal, upgrade to a Martinelli from day one. The other thing I had considered, because under Emery, we don't talk about it enough, I don't think. His defensive data has been since he took over, has been really good. And I wonder, Moreno
especially at home.
Is it right? So
yeah,
Moreno still hasn't returned to train, still hasn't returned to feature in the Premier League. We know he's going to be back soon, but we heard this a while ago. He's been out for so long that I think Luca Dean's still going to get the next handful of games. And I was looking at the Wildcard 10 draft going, could I go for a punt of Dean and Cash and Watkins as my triple up? And I think I'll settle on the 2 and it will just be Cash and Watkins. But if I'm going for third Aston Villa at the moment, I'm looking at either Martinez or Dean over Diaby. I just don't see how I can fit Diaby in the midfield because there's so many other good options.
Again, it's a tricky one. You're right about the number of options. Let's say if Matoma emerges as one, and if you're more confident on minutes by game week 10, I think he's perfectly fine. I honestly don't even mind going with Mbeumo. I know the fixtures for Brentford aren't great, but we know that when the fixtures are tough, he's going to play as the striker in the 3-5-2, and he's going to be on penalties, and he's going to be a 90-minute man. So even though it doesn't really sound exciting, I don't think there's any problem holding on to someone like Mbeumo. I mean, I think he can get points in any fixture, and he's just a good hold for the long period.
Yeah, exactly that. I think you're right. Big man, is your chair bouncing up and down? People have asked in the chat. I've said no, it's definitely not going to be his chair bouncing up and down. It must be your desk or your camera bouncing up and down.
It's basically the camera because of the fan.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, look, we're not going to tell you to turn your fan off, mate. I'm guessing it's pretty hot. Let's have a look at that 9 and 10 wildcard draft, shall we? If we were to wildcard in game week 9 or 10, this is what you've drawn up as something you could go with in game week 9. We've discussed a lot of these players already. Some good enablers in there, like Taylor feels like a very good bet for enabler. Archer still features. Palmer, we mentioned earlier, now on pens. The goalkeepers, I'm expecting most of us wildcarding in 9 or 10 are going to go with this pairing. Have you looked anywhere else? Because I think Martinez at 4.5 could be your long-term set and forget, but Areola's just so cheap.
Martinez from Villa?
Yeah, I like Martinez. I know he's not been spoken about. He's like 6% owned, but...
And he's 4.9. He's 4.9.
Yeah, he's 4.9, and I just think he'll get some save points. There's good clean sheet odds for the first few, and when the fixtures turn, I still think he's a good asset to have because I like the Emery backline. So from all the keepers outside of the budget guys, Martinez is the one I like.
I think if you're spending big, then the standard option is Raya from Arsenal. I personally would go there, but the problem there is that Arsenal are playing Brentford in game week 13, and he's going to be ineligible. And if
Yes.
Turner doesn't show up, because Turner doesn't really seem 100% nailed for starts as well, you might end up without a keeper in 13, and you don't want to put yourself in that situation, which is why I think going with double Arsenal defense or double Arsenal midfield is better than investing in their goalkeeper. Uh, but I mean, I personally think that Ariola and Turner pick themselves. Ariola is going to get plenty of saves regardless of the fixtures. We've seen enough. When you look at saves per 90, he's right up there. I think he's in top 5 for keepers. Um, and West Ham have a very good run of fixtures from
Yeah,
game
they
week
do.
10 as well. So I mean, they will get clean sheets, and he's the sort of keeper when West Ham do keep a clean sheet, he's likely to get bonus points as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's probably overthinking it to look anywhere but these two because of the price. It would be interesting in game week 9 if Turner was dropped and where that leaves us. Would we be happy going Areola as our set and forget with a number 2 option that perhaps isn't a starter 2? Having Turner as a starter gives us a bit of a security blanket on Areola.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
is why we're
There were
not looking
rumors.
at Martinez, for example, or
Yeah,
or a
and
$5 million option.
there were rumors that Flecken would be out till mid-November, but seems as if that he'll be back. He was pictured in training, so it looks as if he'll be back for game week 9. So there was a school of thought of picking Strakosha, but I think Turner is fine as well. He's probably a better pick now.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Oh no, Michael's leaving us because the stream froze. Guys, we're sorry if there's been connection issues. I think me and Big Man are maybe all right, but I think the hosting of the stream is coming in and out. So yeah, hopefully you can watch on catch up. If you have left, do come back, but stay with us. We'll try and sort it. What are the big changes between the 9 and 10 draft, Big Man? I don't know how many changes you've made and how different that looks. At the moment, this one doesn't have some of the players we've discussed, for example.
Yeah. Firstly, what are your thoughts on the game week 9 wildcard draft? I mean,
good point.
Where would you go differently? Let's talk through it one by one.
Yeah, I like that. It's a tough one. I mean, I don't like triple Villa for the reasons we've just discussed. It's not amazing. I don't think I'd go down Burn. I think there's slightly better options there. Like Burn's going to be on the bench a lot, isn't he? With that lineup, he's a 4th defender, I think, or maybe Tsimikas. Oh, I don't know. Look. This fixture doesn't give you triple Spurs for Fulham. Like I think that Monday night fixture to Fulham, arguably Son is the best captaincy option this week. I know many will go Haaland and Salah. We'll discuss captaincy in a minute, but this draft doesn't have Porro and doesn't have Maddison, and those 3 are in a hell of a lot of teams. We own them, and we'll have them in 9. So I guess that's the biggest difference between the 9 and the 10 is the triple Spurs.
Again, that's what I'm coming to, because that's why I think that game week 10 wildcard is probably better than the 9 one, because I don't want to overcommit to Spurs, because again, their run of fixtures from game week 10 is slightly tricky as well. But if you see this draft, it's very, very close to my game week 10 wildcard draft, because I want to ensure that all the picks that I'm picking are good long-term picks.
Yeah.
The only major difference is in defense. For example, I've picked Tsimikas here. Over there, I haven't really picked Tsimikas with the assumption that Robertson could be back by in 2 or 3 weeks' time. I've also got a Newcastle defender instead of doubling up on the Arsenal defense, because this isn't the ideal week to double up on the Arsenal defense. And obviously Newcastle are the bookies' favorites of all teams in the league to keep a clean sheet this week. So these are the subtle differences that I have. Other than that, I think 13 of the 15 are the same.
Yeah, you're right. The whole idea of going, it's a long term. It's players that you are happy to own for more than 5 weeks or more than 6-7 weeks. And that's why when I put together, I think on my channel last week, we showed it on Monday, I did a combined, this wildcard draft works for 9 or 10 draft. And it kind of was that. And it was very similar to what we can see here. Let's have a look at the game week 10 wildcard draft though. Let's have a look what you've put together and any major differences. So the midfield's the same there. We've got the double Arsenal defence is the biggest change. And then you've got a Palace defender in. We've not spoken about Palace. Yeah. Again, I feel like Palace are perhaps one of the most unfashionable clubs for FPL going. Other than Zaha and Eze a little bit in the last couple of seasons, we never own Palace players. The defenders never come with upside under Roy Hodgson. We know that. But the 4.5 million assets there do come with clean sheet guarantees every now and then. So Roy Hodgson teams will keep them. And I know Anderson scored a couple of goals, but harder to predict a centre-back scoring than, say, a full-back that gets assists. And the Palace fullbacks don't tend to get assists. But Palace defence, for those regular 6-pointers, probably being a little bit overlooked.
I think Johnson has been a revelation for those who've picked him. He's delivered points week in, week out. Similarly, Gahey and Anderson and the likes have done really well as well. Palace, they were showing signs of defensive resurgence at the back end of last season under Roy Hodgson, and they've basically carried that form into this season. So why I have Gahey in this draft is because, as mentioned earlier, I think that Palace and Brighton both rotate really well with Palmer. So if you're having... Basically, Palmer is the key to having a Salah, Saka, Son, and Haaland draft. So if you have a Palmer in there, then you would want to rotate him with, a Brighton or Palace defender, because Chelsea's fixtures aren't the best. So Palmer isn't exactly a perma play.
Yeah, I like that. So it's not a set formation. It's at times a 4-4-2, and at times
it's flexible.
3-5,
exactly.
3-5-2.
It's flexible.
Palmer allows that. Another player at the similar price point, as mentioned in the chat, and I mentioned this on the official FPL app if you read about West Ham assets. And look, Bowen hasn't featured in these drafts because, again, it's spending 7 million-ish, which is difficult. But if you want a bit of that West Ham attack, Souček is 4.9. The last couple of games, he's played super advanced for Souček, ahead of Ward-Prowse. And when Souček first signed for West Ham in that debut season, he scored 10 league goals. Many will remember him. I think it was like a 4 million defender, midfield, 4.5 million mid. Yeah. You could go Souček instead of Palmer. You could spend even less and hope that Elliot Anderson at Newcastle gets game time, and we know more about Tonali. But yeah, what's your take on West Ham? Because we haven't seen Bowen in these drafts.
Exactly. I mean, again, why we don't see Bowen here is because when you're getting Salah, Saka, Son and Haaland, there's no room, right?
Yeah.
You'll have to sell one of them to get someone like a Bowen. And even the West Ham fixtures are great. That's basically the compromise you're making. But having said that, I have my eyes on Souček. That's a very good point. And if he plays in that role, in that advanced role, he was very good in that role. And then he dropped deeper, which is why he hasn't really been an FPL pick for, let's say, past 1.5 years. But if he's playing advanced at 4.9 with West Ham's fixtures, he is interesting. He is definitely one to watch out for. And I will have an eye on him this week as well.
Yeah, this week's important because I want to know long term, is Moyes playing him as in a more advanced role, or was it just opponent specific in the last 2 weeks? And it's literally been that. I posted on Twitter his average position map last week in game week 8, and he was advanced. But I do also wonder, with him playing more advanced, he's considered one of the attacking 4 players, and with that, he's vulnerable to early subs. So if you look at his minutes when he's played in that role, the last 2 weeks, he's had something like 70 minutes and 75 minutes. And with that in mind, he's not guaranteed for 90 like he is when he plays deeper. So again, just one to monitor there with West Ham. The attacking numbers aren't amazing for West Ham, but the fixtures are clearly there. And we would all love Bowen, but I'm with you. We can't have them all. And, is it Bowen or an Arsenal midfielder? It's an Arsenal midfielder for me. And Gordon's been mentioned in the chat. We like Gordon. We definitely like Gordon. But again, he's not Souček Palmer money. It's that 0.7. And unfortunately,
exactly.
every 0.5, every 0.1 matters.
And Newcastle fixtures are turning as well. That's not ideal.
Yeah, they are a little bit, aren't they? They are a little bit. Let's move on to our next question, shall we? We've seen and had lots of wildcard chat, but there's still some big questions centered around 1 week punts and centered around no Haaland. We're also going to see big man's team. 1 week punts. Newcastle attacker, I'm going to throw in there straight away because we just mentioned Newcastle. I need to check this out. I feel so out the loop. Wilson and Isak fitness at the moment, either injured or both injured and neither injured. I don't even know.
Wilson was on the bench in the previous game and Isak scored twice. So you'd expect Isak to play twice, to play again this week, and then maybe in the Champions League as well. I'm not entirely sure how Eddie Howe will go. It just seems to be a headache every week. There's just a random roulette going on over there.
Yeah, I don't mind Isak as 1 week punt versus Palace though. Not at all. I mean, I own Darwin, so if Darwin isn't starting, I'm going to be selling Darwin probably in my 1 week punt. The guy I like the look of most for 1 week is Højlund, and I do think those that have Man United assets, we say it every week, give them one more week, but actually this week, do give them one more week because Sheffield United are so poor, right? If that's a fixture to target.
Exactly. I mean, speaking of 1 week punts, Johnny, let's go position by position.
Yeah, go on.
Defense, who would you go for?
I mean, if you don't own Trippier, I think there's a big score there if you can reach him. Like, Trips gives the upside. Some will say Matty Cash, but I actually don't know if I can call that Aston Villa West Ham game, which again is another reason why I'm happy not wildcarding in 9. I don't think Ollie Watkins and Cash and Diaby are needed in 9 because I wouldn't be surprised to see that as a 1-1 draw. So Trippier is the main standout defender, I guess, at the moment for a 1 week punt.
Yeah, I think Trippier and Porro. If you don't have Porro, then he's the one. I think from Spurs, I watched the Luton game and he was taking up some really encouraging positions.
Yeah,
and he was. I mean, I had Son captain in that game and I had Porro as well. I bought Porro last week, and
me too. The first 5 minutes when he missed that, Son put him in, didn't he? And he missed that sitter.
He missed a glorious chance, and I mean that would have been a 15-20 point swing had that gone in. But anyway, regardless of that, I think Trippier and Porro, if you don't own, are the defensive punts I would pick. In midfield, slightly trickier, and this is where I'm looking at someone because I actually held on to Sterling last week, Johnny. And,
I saw you did. Fair play. I'm so glad you did because I said I was completely 50-50 on even if he'd start.
Yeah, we didn't have any leaks, so I sort of rolled the dice. I went with Porro. I thought that my defense needed some surgery, so I got Porro in, and I kept on to Sterling, and he did really well. But so now this is, I mean, Arsenal. We've spoken about their defensive underlying data. He's someone I'm probably looking at selling if I decide to wildcard in 10, which isn't really sure. But let's say if I am committing to the strategy, then I think I will sell Sterling. Again, this is dependent on if Alvarez starts as well. But if I am going for a midfield punt, who would you go for? I have my eyes on, let's say, a Liverpool mid. If we
Jota might be starting as the number 9 or even out wide, but Jota's a good option, isn't he, for 1 week?
You think he'll start?
I do. I'd be very surprised if both Diaz and Darwin start, right? And if only one of them drops out, I think Jota comes in, perhaps even over Hakpo. It could be both Hakpo and Jota. The early kickoff, we know what Klopp does with the South American players. He very rarely starts them, but yeah, we'll get the league. I also, however, would mention Everton are better than we give them credit for, and Liverpool don't do well in the early kickoff against Wolves a month ago. That first half was shocking. Wolves should have been clearing away. But then halftime hit and Liverpool came out a different team and won the game. But I like Liverpool attack. Of course I do. They're a brilliant attack. But I don't know if we have to have Liverpool attack this week. And I've looked and thought I might even sell Saka for a 1 week punt and go to someone like a Bruno. I think Bruno is a really nice 1 week punt option.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I already own Bruno. So I think Bruno is an excellent shout. You can even Mbomo. I mean, why not against Burnley? Burnley at home, he was popular, at least sort of been out of form in recent times, but this is a fixture where you'd expect Brentford to fight back, right? Yep. And maybe Richarlison again.
Oh yeah, forget he's listed as a midfielder still. How much is he? He's at under 7.
6.7. 6.7. Good price. Again, he was sacrificed for Bissouma, but he had 2 glorious chances as well in that spell that we were speaking of in the first 15-20 minutes for Spurs. And maybe even Morgan Gibbs-White. I don't think he's a bad pick at home to Luton.
Yeah, I don't mind that. It's just backing a team like Forest with the ceiling of if they score, will they score more than 1?
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. But it's Luton and he's on penalties.
Yeah. Man City mids. If we had a leak again, like going for a 1 week punt on a Foden or a Doku, look, Brighton are a really fun team, but we know the chances against them will be big, and Man City at home are so reliable. So I perhaps would look there, but I think my 1 week punt will probably go in the direction of a Man United player. If I'm selling, say, a Darwin to go to a Højlund or a Saka to go to a Bruno, or potentially I could sell Matoma for a week, and in and around that Matoma price point, as you mentioned, and Bomo's a good solid option. and Richarlison definitely is, but I think many
will be on 3 Spurs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I would go Richarlison in a heartbeat as a 1 week punt.
Yeah.
But yeah, Porro, Madison.
I think Bruno and Richarlison, if you can get to Spurs mid, but Bruno I think is the standout. If you're looking at a budget mid, then who is the one who stands out? I assume it's Jota for you.
Yeah, I mean he's mid price, isn't he? I think Jota. I think so. I mean, you could look at Newcastle for a budget mid and go Gordon for 1 week.
Yeah, I don't like the ceiling over there. I think they're midfielders with higher ceiling. I think Jota, even Gibbs White, I think these guys have higher ceiling.
Do you think Gibbs White? Yeah, you're back. I mean, Forest are good at home. It's just they've been a little bit lackluster in front of goal, but yeah, Luton are poor. I like that. There is some good 1 week options. Would you say Bruno over Rashford? I mean, I was big on Bruno versus Rashford, and I still am. But watching Rashford last night for England, I was like, okay, maybe there's signs here. But Bruno's been equally as good over the international break for Portugal, and Bruno for me with the penalty appeal is the easy pick.
And 90 minutes as well, because Rashford annoyingly is getting subbed around the 65, 70 minute mark. So those extra 20 minutes go a long way. And I think it's an easy decision. Bruno is a better asset. If I was making this decision, let's say 3 weeks ago, it was trickier. But Bruno is simply a better asset at the moment.
Yeah. There we go. There's 200 of you watching. If you fancy hitting that like button, guys, if you haven't already subscribed, I'm sure you've subscribed, then please do. But definitely hit the like button. Let's have a look at our next question before we see Big Man's team and look at his transfer.
Gianni, before we close the section, we've discussed the defense, we've discussed the midfield.
Oh my God,
how the forwards?
Come on, the forwards. I mean,
the forwards.
Yeah, 1 week. If we know Darwin is starting, which I'm really skeptical, I'd be surprised. But Darwin's a lovely 1 week punt. He really is. And obviously, I've mentioned Højlund already, who again, by the way, Højlund looked good for Denmark, didn't he?
You know why I'm asking this? I'm asking this because there is every chance that we get news pre-deadline that Alvarez is benched. So a lot of us will be in the same position.
Yeah. Yeah. Darwin versus Højlund would be a tough one. If we knew Darwin was starting, I don't know if I'd go Darwin or Højlund. I guess I'd go Darwin for the home fixture. But if you're Man United at the moment, I feel like Man United versus Sheffield United away is one of the best fixtures they could have asked for, because the Old Trafford crowd are getting on their back a bit. It might be quite nice for United to be away from home, and Sheffield United's the best away fixture you could wish for. So Højlund has a sensational fixture.
Yeah, his numbers have been good as well. I mean, ever since he started playing, he's top among all Man United players for XG and big chances. So clearly, he's the big goal threat in the Man United side. But there are a few poor souls like myself who already have Bruno and Rashford and wouldn't want to put ourselves in the misery of owning 3 United against Sheffield United, right?
Yeah,
that's the issue.
Isak's the other one, isn't he? We haven't mentioned like Isak. Newcastle attack is decent, and Palace without Eze are a weaker team. We expect that to be a home win, and Isak's been flying. It's been flying.
I mean, there's that as well. And what about Watkins? Would you like to?
I don't know.
Watkins that list?
I think this shouldn't affect us, should it? It shouldn't affect us, the fact that we're wildcarding him in game week 10. But I'm reluctant for my 1 week punt to be a player that I know I'm going to own in game week 10, which is ridiculous. If he's the best pick now, it doesn't matter if you're going to. But I want someone I can have an affair with. I want someone I can have for 24 hours and forget about them and know that come game week 10, I'm marrying that next player.
You basically want to have a one night stand with someone no one else has.
So I'm sorry, Ollie Watkins, but I'm looking more in the direction of Højlund this week, just for that buzz.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I can't completely understand it, but I mean, these 3 guys, I mean, they're all good picks. Darwin, Højlund and Watkins. I'm finding it very difficult to separate them. I think if we get news that Darwin is starting, Darwin and Watkins are probably the best ones.
No.
But it's tough.
You're not interested in Isak, no? You wouldn't look there.
It's the early sub that will worry me.
Yeah. The complete share of minutes is so frustrating.
And to be very honest, Gianni, I'm a bit scarred after the Newcastle team leaks in game week 7. I picked Botman after he was rumored to have started. 3 or 4 different sources claimed that he was starting, and they were very specific about it with Botman. And turns out he didn't start, and he was injured for like 2 or 3 weeks. So, I mean, I'm not sure I'm going to trust the league that Isak is starting this time around. I'm a bit hesitant.
Yeah, I hear that. In a way, I'm quite pleased. I'll be distracted away from too many of those rubbish leaks this week because I'll be busy. Guys, good to see so many of you engaging with questions in the chat. Sorry, we've not been able to get to too many of them, but I can see Manon's with us and Joachim and Shastain and Shock and Tony. Rahul is there. We'll try and get to a couple if we can. So best 1 week punts, I feel like we've done. Love the fact we've covered that in detail because I think many of us will be looking at a 1 week punt. Let's spend 5 minutes max, if we can, which is keep or sell Haaland. I guess my first question for you, mate, is have you made a draft without him? And is it something you're even considering? I'm going to be honest and start the conversation off with, and maybe this is me being too short-sighted and maybe I should at least look. I'm not even prepared to look. I know I'm owning Erling Haaland and I'm not going to make a draft without him and he'll 100% be in my game week 10 team. And maybe that's naive because I completely get the flip side of how far you can make the rest of the budget stretch and how good your team can look without Haaland. But I'm not willing to go there. I still think even with captaincy in the next 7-8 weeks, he'll have the armband at least 3 times for me.
I think you summed it up beautifully. I'll just be a bit more specific with what you're saying regarding captaincy. I think there was more appeal to selling him in game week 8 than there is now.
Yeah,
because of the Arsenal fixture, and because Salah had a favorable fixture against Brighton last week. When you look at the next two, Brighton at home, Burnley at home in game week 11. Those are fixtures where he's going to be the template captain. Other than that, let's assume we're wildcarding in 10. I mean, Haaland has a great record against the big 6. I mean, those are the teams City are basically playing in game week 10, 12, and 13. He's had 10 returns in 10 games against them. And not just that, I mean, he's still top for XGI this season. So you're essentially betting against someone with those numbers, with that frightening ownership, only to sort of buy him in 4 weeks' time, because obviously you will have to buy him after 4 weeks, right? Because he's too scary to go without. So I don't really get the logic behind booking a transfer in for a player like that. The main reason why people have opted for Haaland so far is because they can spread the money around and potentially afford a stronger squad. But I don't see game week 10 wildcarders or game week 9 wildcarders sharing the same sentiment, because where will you go if you sell Haaland in 10?
You have to. If you do that,
I don't think Trippier is a must-have.
Yeah.
Because of the fixture that Newcastle have.
Yeah.
Man United have City in game week 10. Where will the funds go?
Yeah, you can. I mean, double Arsenal attack would be perhaps quite fun, but still, you're going to have tons of money. You're going to have tons of money. There's not an abundance of 10 million assets this year. There's Son, and there's the United mids that are close to that, but who haven't been performing. And yeah, I'm with you there. I think. All right, let's change the question. Someone said what the question should be: do we captain Haaland this week? Says Shashan.
100%. I think
at the moment he's my captain. Yeah,
captain.
It's Haaland or Son for me.
It's Haaland clear. It's Haaland clear because of his minutes, because of the fact that his underlying numbers are far and above everyone else this season, and because Brighton have been very poor defensively. When you look at Brighton, I mean, under De Zerbi last season they were around 6th or 7th for XGC, but this season they're conceding chances at a very rapid rate, and their defense is sort of gone under the radar, but they're conceding chances for fun. I think this is a fixture, especially at home. Haaland is a monster at home. I think this is a very good fixture, and Haaland is easily the best captaincy option.
Yeah. So Khan says if you want to go without Haaland, do it from game week 12, which is interesting because Brighton at home next up, then it's United away, but then it's Bournemouth at home in game week 11. That's going to be the scary week. Bournemouth at home for those that went against him. But then in 12, and it's a fair point, it's Chelsea away, Liverpool home, Spurs home, Villa away. That is 4 tricky games before you'd have to get him back for the Luton fixture in 16. The only problem with that is if you're getting Haaland out, you've got to do it on a wild card so you can at least try and make use of those funds. You can't. No one's going to be taking out Haaland in a normal transfer. And no one, unfortunately, with that strategy is wildcarding in game week 12. It's just not the same in terms of fixture swings. And because of price rises, I think many would want to have gone before that anyway. But yeah, it's a fair point. Now the ones you probably want him to miss. Nice. I think let's move away from Haaland. I'm glad you're pro Haaland, mate. I get it. There's a few big name managers out there that are going without, and I think it's an interesting move. I don't know. I don't want to criticize the move at all because I think it's brave, and I like the fact that managers are playing their own game. And in a way, it would be refreshing if it worked for them. It would be nice if it worked to show us all that this template 90% pick that we've never had before, by the way, we've never had anything like 90% ownership consistently. It would be nice if he wasn't essential and he wasn't absolutely needed, but I can't see that changing for a long time. So let's move away from this third question and on to your team, mate. Talk us through what you're thinking about doing this week.
If I'm committing to a game week 10 wildcard, then the transfer is going to be dependent on team leaks.
Yeah.
If Alvarez is starting, then I'll probably sell Sterling for a Liverpool mid or a Gibbs White. If Alvarez isn't starting, then I'll probably get Watkins, Nunes, or Højlund, which is again team dependent, leagues dependent. Yeah. The tricky part is deciding whether to commit the game week 10 wildcard strategy. Because if I'm not wildcarding in game week 10, then I can easily save a transfer. I don't have to make a transfer with this team if Alvarez is starting. Save
a transfer to get Salah in for 10.
Exactly, with a hit, I can do that in 10. So it's slightly tricky, and I can even play Botman over Udogie this week. I think if Botman is fit, then I'll probably play him over Udogie because Newcastle have better on defensive underlying data, and their odds are better as well. And without Eze, I don't think that Palace will score.
It's hard that we're both going to have to commit to that game week 10 wildcard with our game week 9 transfer, because it's either roll and save the transfer, or it's hit the button knowing you're doing a 1 week punt, and then literally as soon as that game week deadline's passed, you'll probably activate your wildcard and start making transfers because of team value. What's stopping you not committing to that game week 10 wildcard? Is it because, like me, you're actually in a good place? Other than Salah, you got a lot of those key players anyway. But what we don't have is the Villa players. So, yes, we could take a 4-point hit and easily get Salah into our teams, but that still doesn't necessarily give us cash on Watkins.
It doesn't give us cash on Watkins. It doesn't give us Gabriel Saka either.
Yeah. But I've got Saka instead of the Arsenal mid. So, in a way, I'm slightly better set than you, but still, it doesn't give me a lot of those nice things.
I honestly think that Fernandes and Saka are fine for a while. The argument against wildcarding is that I personally think Mboma is fine to keep. I think Fernandes is fine to keep for a while because United's fixtures are fine as well. Rashford I can sell next week and get to Salah. But again, I'm not sure whether it's optimal because going without Villa, going without Arsenal is basically going to be the tricky part. Again, Pickford is also another problem. So while I can get through it, it seems like I'm being overly defensive, but I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to sort of rethink the strategy and again compare it with the possible game week 19 wildcard and what the benefits of that might be as compared to my current team. Where are you at with the game week 19 wildcard?
I've looked at it and I like it. I like the fact that I can go big on Triple City as well, because by then, let's say De Bruyne's back. You could go De Bruyne, Diaz, Haaland. Only wildcarders will be able to get to that sort of looking team ahead of a double game week for Man City that could happen in game week 20, which would be something like a double of, top of my head, it would be Brentford and Sheffield United. So I really like it, and I like the fact that I can dead end around that blank in 18, knowing that I can ditch my City assets rather than bench them because I can wildcard them back in, and again you can use that money. But I'm worried with the game week 19 wildcard, mate. I mentioned it earlier. Perhaps I'm worried about it more than you. Team value again, I think would be hit if you wait till game week 19, because you won't be able to get on all those. Yes, you might be able to get on a Watkins or Salah now, but there's loads of other players there, like, I don't know, a Gabriel or whoever, that will just see those marginal increases that you would have gone with in game week 10 that perhaps you won't be able to prioritize as a single transfer, and then you'll miss out. I'm 95% sure I'm going to go with the game week 10 wildcard. And I have done lots of drafts of my team of going, how can I get Watkins, Cash, Salah in with only a point -4 or with only a -8? And pretty much to get to a team I'm happy with, it's a -8 or even a -12. And I think that's worth wildcarding for. And if I wildcard, I won't just be making those 4 or 5 moves. I'll be making 10. And with that in mind, I think I'm going to pull the trigger. I can always take a hit in game week 18, 19, 20 if I need to then,
There's just a couple of counter arguments here. I mean, counter arguments in terms of the game week 19 wildcard, which support what you're basically saying. That firstly, it seems like it's a very short period of time, and that very short window where City will blank and Brentford will double. So you're basically prioritizing that short window to make gains, as opposed to right now where you can make longer term gains. And the second thing is that you'll have to make those calls in game week 19 while the City double is in game week 20. And I think you'll be best placed making those calls right before the game week 20 deadline, as opposed to in game week 19, because with City, things change every day, let alone every game week. So it's very difficult to predict who the optimal 3 to own will be in game week 19 when you're actually preparing for game week 20.
Yeah. I completely with you there. And it's going to be interesting for managers that do wildcard in 19, how that swing affects them and how they manage to get to 19. And they'll be praying for a few blanks from a Salah or a Watkins, because perhaps they won't be able to have both, and maybe Arsenal mids. But yeah, I can't see myself going there. A couple of weeks ago, I was like, I'm going completely flexible week by week. But now I feel like I am going to be committing to that game week 10 wildcard. And look, by Saturday morning, I will 100% have committed to one strategy or another. So find out on Monday's show exactly what we do. But look, Dean and I will be back on Friday to make sure we have more time to answer your questions. Because we noticed there's been a lot of questions we've not had time to answer because it's been such a great chat today. There's been loads to discuss. But we've addressed the 3 big ones: the 1 week punts, the wild card, the Haller debate. So, the Haaland, did I say Haller? Haaland, Salah mix. So I feel like we've addressed all the big issues, really, haven't we?
Exactly. And it's, captaincy we touched on as well. All the wildcard windows, everything has been discussed in detail. It's been so engaging that we haven't had the time to take questions. But again, as you said, that we've been very comprehensive with the discussion. So hopefully we've answered all questions that our listeners have had this week.
Yeah, some have just joined. I saw Craig said he's just only found the stream. So he's going to go back to the beginning and watch the last hour. Thanks for doing that, Craig. And if you guys are just joining, then do that. Go back. You might be 50 minutes in. You might be 10 minutes in and go and watch the next 50 minutes. Go back and check it out. And make sure you hit that like and subscribe button as well. Only 45 likes. I'd love to say goodbye to you all on 100 likes. Let's see if we can get that like button up. And I'll be checking in to see if that happened. But look, me and Big Man will be back next Wednesday. Me and Dean are back on Friday. We'll be doing that community team on Friday. We've got some decisions to make there. And again, we'll probably have to commit to when we wildcard with that community team too. I wonder if it will follow a similar strategy to me and Big Man with maybe a 10 wildcard. Thank you, CH, for encouraging those likes to be hit. But for now, guys, we're going to say goodbye. He's been Big Man. I've been Janny, and we've been chasing green arrows.